What if the greatest sci-fi wonders of the 60s were never given the praise they deserved? What if bold visions, strange experiments, and daring stories were buried under bigger releases and louder headlines? This countdown reveals forgotten treasures that slipped through the cracks. These films shaped the future of the genre, yet critics ignored them. Prepare to rediscover 14 overlooked gems. Number 14, Village of the Damned, 1960. Village of the Damned arrived with an icy whisper rather than a roar. Critics of the era brushed it aside, seeing it as a simple thriller instead of a groundbreaking tale of fear and control. Audiences later realized its power, but at the time it remained overshadowed by louder films. Its quiet menace made it easy for reviewers to underestimate the film. The story unfolds in a peaceful English village where an unexplained blackout leaves every resident unconscious. When they awaken, the women find themselves mysteriously pregnant. Their children are born with glowing eyes and eerie intelligence. The film builds its terror slowly through silence, stares, and the unsettling unity of the children. Nothing feels exaggerated, yet everything feels wrong, which makes the horror even sharper. Behind the scenes, the production struggled with limited resources and strict studio oversight. The filmmakers leaned on atmosphere rather than expensive effects. This choice led critics to misread the film as lacking ambition. In truth, the restraint made every scene feel cold, calculated, and haunting. Even today, its pacing feels deliberate and hypnotic, holding the viewer in an unbroken grip. The legacy of Village of the Damned has grown stronger across decades. Later filmmakers praised its influence and its daring approach to alien invasion storytelling. Modern critics call it one of the most quietly terrifying films of the 60s. It stands as a forgotten gem, finally earning recognition after being dismissed on arrival. Number 13, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. This film blended newsroom drama with apocalyptic science fiction, yet critics barely noticed its innovation. Released during a decade overflowing with spectacle, The Day the Earth Caught Fire chose grounded tension over flashy effects. Reviewers expected explosions and visual chaos, but instead received a character-driven story about journalists racing against a dying planet. This mismatch kept it from earning proper acclaim. The plot follows a burned-out reporter and a young typist who uncover the truth about nuclear tests that have tilted the Earth off its axis. Heat wave storms and political panic unfold around them, yet the film stays focused on human reactions. Instead of giant monsters or intergalactic battles, the danger arrives through rising temperatures, failed governments, and desperate citizens. The realism made the threat feel disturbingly possible. Production was a challenge with limited budgets and tight outdoor shooting. Schedules. The team used orange-tinted filters to create the illusion of a world burning alive. Some reviewers dismissed this effect as too subtle, but later analysis praises it as an early example of environmental storytelling. The film carried a heavy message about the global consequences of carelessness long before ecological disaster became a mainstream topic. Number 12. Panic in Year Zero, 1962. Panic in Year Zero arrived as a rough, low-budget survival film, and critics dismissed it as simplistic. They saw it as a drive-in curiosity rather than a serious exploration of post-nuclear collapse. Because of its modest production quality, reviewers overlooked the bold themes hiding beneath the surface. This caused the film to vanish from major discussions of 60s science fiction. The story follows a family fleeing Los Angeles moments after a nuclear attack. Instead of focusing on the attack itself, the film studies what happens next. Roads turn dangerous, supplies vanish, and trust becomes a luxury. The father becomes increasingly hardened, willing to do anything to protect his family. This shift in character was startling for its era, presenting moral decay as a slow and painful transformation. Production pressures shaped this intensity. With a tight budget, the filmmakers relied on rawness rather than polished visuals. Sparse locations, handheld shots, and gritty performances created an unfiltered atmosphere. However, critics of the era expected glossy nuclear thrillers, not stripped-down realism. They misread the roughness as weakness rather than deliberate tension. In later decades, scholars re-examined the film and recognized it as a precursor to modern survivalist cinema. Its exploration of human behavior under pressure feels shockingly current. Some even view it as an early blueprint for later apocalyptic classics. Number 11. The Day of the Triffids, 1963. The Day of the Triffids entered the decade as a pulpy adaptation of a beloved novel, and critics did not know what to make of it. They expected a faithful literary translation. Instead, they found a looser, chaotic tale filled with eerie plant creatures and scenes of global collapse. This mismatch allowed reviewers to dismiss it as mere monster fun, and the film faded from attention. The plot begins with a meteor shower that blinds most of the population. In this darkness, towering carnivorous plants called triffids roam freely, attacking the helpless. The hero, a man who keeps his sight only because of a hospital treatment, attempts to navigate cities in ruin while society crumbles around him. The film mixes wandering terror with a sense of isolation that grows heavier with each sequence. Behind the scenes, the production was anything but smooth. The studio used two different directors, each shaping different sections of the film. This created tonal shifts that reviewers criticized as inconsistency. Yet those same shifts give the movie an unsettling, dreamlike quality when viewed today. Budget limits forced the crew to design the triffids using practical effects and puppetry, which some critics mocked. Modern audiences, however, appreciate the strange, organic menace of those designs. Over the years, the film has earned cult admiration. Its atmosphere, its off-kilter pacing, and its bold imagery became touchstones for future apocalyptic cinema. While it never pleased critics upon release, it now stands as a forgotten 60s gem. Number 10. X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, 1963. When this film premiered, critics approached it with low expectations because it came from Roger Corman, known for fast, cheap productions. Reviewers assumed it would be another disposable thriller. Instead, it delivered one of the decade's most haunting stories about knowledge obsession and the limits of human perception. Yet those strengths went unnoticed at the time, leaving the film underappreciated. The plot follows Dr. James Xavier, a scientist who invents eye drops that expand his vision far beyond normal limits. At first, he can see through walls and perceive hidden truths. Soon, however, his enhanced sight becomes a curse. He sees too much and cannot escape the endless layers of reality. The terror grows slowly, turning scientific curiosity into cosmic dread. Production was shaped by tight budgets and quick schedules, which demanded creativity rather than luxury. The crew used colored lighting, surreal overlays, and minimalist set pieces to depict Xavier's expanding vision. Critics of the era saw these choices as cheap shortcuts. In reality, they created a vivid expression of sensory overload. The final scenes in particular carry a nightmarish beauty that later filmmakers openly admired. Modern critics recognize X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes as a daring psychological sci-fi film far ahead of its time. Its exploration of human limits influenced later cosmic horror stories. Number 9. Ikarie XB1, 1963. This Czechoslovak film was so ahead of its time that critics in the 60s barely understood its ambition. Ikarie XB1 aimed for philosophical depth rather than action, and its quiet, reflective style confused reviewers. When it was released in the United States, the distributors cut scenes, changed the story, and even altered the ending. The damaged version made it impossible for critics to appreciate its brilliance. The story centers on the crew of a deep space vessel on a long journey toward a distant star. Instead of focusing on battles or alien invasions, the film studies loneliness, hope, and the passage of time. The characters face existential dangers, including a derelict ship filled with the dead and an encounter with an unknown cosmic force. Through these events, the film suggests that humanity's greatest challenge is not violence, but understanding its place in the universe. Behind the scenes, the filmmakers worked with limited resources, but used them with elegance. Soft lighting, thoughtful set design, and slow, graceful camera movement created a future that felt believable rather than sensational. The international distributors misunderstood this tone and reshaped the film into a more conventional thriller. This harmed its reputation for decades. Eventually, film historians restored the original version and recognized its influence on later classics. Many now see Ikarie XB1 as a precursor to space films that explore emotion rather than spectacle. Number 8. The Damned, 1963. The Damned arrived as a strange hybrid of youth rebellion drama and chilling science fiction. but critics of the era did not know how to categorize it. Its blend of moral panic, social commentary, and radioactive tragedy felt too unconventional for mainstream reviewers. As a result, it received little attention and quickly disappeared from the public eye, despite its daring ideas and haunting atmosphere. The story begins with a violent youth gang roaming the English coast. A tourist becomes entangled with them and soon uncovers a government secret hidden deep within a fortified bunker. Inside the bunker, children are kept isolated, raised in strict control, and untouched by the outside world. These children are revealed to be radioactive immune to a nuclear future, but doomed by their own engineered existence. Behind the scenes, the production struggled with studio interference. The director Joseph Losey faced limitations that forced him to adjust the tone and shorten several sequences. This led critics to misinterpret the film as unfocused. Yet the fractured feeling now adds to the film's eerie mood, making it feel like a nightmare slipping between genres. Its imagery, dark corridors, silent children, and distant coastlines, lingers long after the story ends. Number 7. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. When The Last Man on Earth was released, critics dismissed it as a low-budget oddity. They compared it unfavorably to other horror and sci-fi films of the time and ignored its emotional storytelling. It adapted Richard Matheson's influential novel, yet reviewers believed the production quality was too modest to convey its depth. This early judgment kept the film from gaining proper respect. The story follows Dr. Robert Morgan, the lone survivor of a devastating plague that transforms humans into vampire-like creatures. He wanders empty streets, hunts the infected during the day, and returns to a fortified home at night. His loneliness is overwhelming. Flashbacks reveal the painful collapse of his family and the world around him. The film presents survival not as heroism, but as a slow descent into despair. Production challenges shaped its tone. With limited funds, the crew shot on stark, empty locations that unintentionally amplified the sense of desolation. Vincent Price delivered a reserved, melancholic performance unlike his usual theatrical style. Critics at the time misread this as stiffness. However, modern audiences recognize it as one of his most nuanced portrayals filled with quiet grief. Over time, the film earned new appreciation for its faithfulness to the novel. Many scholars argue it directly influenced Night of the Living Dead with its depiction of infected hordes and its bleak tone. Number 6. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. This film was marketed as a simple adventure, but it delivered something far richer. Critics expected a light-hearted space survival tale and were surprised by its slow, thoughtful pacing. Because it did not match their expectations, they dismissed it as an oddity. It vanished quickly, even though it presented one of the most imaginative visions of Mars in 60s cinema. The plot follows an astronaut stranded on the Red Planet after a disastrous mission. With limited supplies, he must navigate harsh terrain, strange life forms, and overwhelming isolation. The film balances scientific speculation with poetic imagery. Scenes of the astronaut carving out shelter, searching for water, and learning to adapt carry a sincerity rarely seen in the era's sci-fi adventures. Production relied heavily on creative effects and detailed miniature work. The filmmakers used unique color schemes, wide landscapes, and careful lighting to depict a Mars that felt both alien and beautiful. Critics of the time overlooked these visual achievements, focusing instead on the absence of grand spectacle. They did not realize the film presented a grounded approach years before realistic survival dramas became popular. Today, Robinson Crusoe on Mars is admired for its authenticity and quiet wonder. Modern critics view it as an essential example of 60s world building and a precursor to later survival epics. It stands as a forgotten treasure that deserved far more praise on release. Number 5. The 10th Victim, 1965. The 10th Victim exploded onto the screen with bold colors, bizarre fashion, and a satirical tone that baffled critics. They expected a traditional thriller, but instead the film delivered a pop art vision of future society where entertainment and violence merged. Because its style felt too strange for mainstream audiences, reviewers dismissed it as style without substance. This early criticism buried the film for decades. The plot takes place in a future where society prevents war by channeling aggression into a televised hunt called The Big Hunt. Participants alternate between being hunters and victims. The story follows a woman seeking her 10th kill and a man who becomes her target. Their game unfolds through shifting alliances, futuristic traps, and playful deception. Beneath the humor, the film hints at a world shaped by media obsession and human cruelty. Behind the scenes, the filmmakers embraced radical design choices. They used surreal interiors, unconventional costumes, and unpredictable camera angles to evoke a world ruled by spectacle. Critics of the era misunderstood these choices, believing they weakened the story. Today, these stylistic risks are seen as visionary, portraying a society drowning in entertainment long before such themes became common in science fiction. Number 4. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Planet of the Vampires arrived with low expectations because it came from the Italian horror maestro Mario Bava, working with a tight budget. Critics labeled it cheap and strange, never imagining it would inspire some of the most iconic sci-fi films of later decades. Because its style felt too intense and its tone too eerie, reviewers ignored its groundbreaking atmosphere. The story follows the crews of two spacecraft responding to a distress signal on a mysterious planet. Upon landing, the crews experience hallucinations, possession, and deadly conflict. The planet itself feels alive, pulsing with dark energy. The film mixes science fiction and gothic horror, creating a nightmare landscape where technology cannot protect the human mind. Production depended heavily on Bava's mastery of lighting and color. He transformed simple sets into surreal environments using fog shadows and vivid hues. Critics at the time saw these choices as overdone. Modern audiences recognized them as genius. Many film historians argue that Planet of the Vampires helped shape the mood of future space horror, including elements later echoed in Alien and other classics. Today, the film is celebrated for its style, creativity, and lasting influence. It proves that imagination often matters more than budget. Number 3. Seconds, 1966. Seconds entered the decade as one of the most daring films ever made about identity and transformation, yet critics rejected it. They struggled with its bleak tone, surreal visuals, and challenging ideas. Because it defied genre labels, it received poor reviews and weak box office performance. Over time, however, many recognized it as a visionary masterpiece hiding in plain sight. The plot follows a middle-aged man who feels trapped in a dull life. A secret organization offers him a new identity with surgically altered features and a chance to start again. He becomes a younger artist hoping for freedom. Instead, he discovers that reinvention comes with dark consequences and that escaping one's past is far more dangerous than remaining in it. Production was bold and unconventional. The director John Frankenheimer used distorted lenses, handheld shots, and unsettling angles to create a claustrophobic, dreamlike world. Critics of the era felt overwhelmed by these techniques. They did not see the film's emotional honesty or its ahead-of-its-time exploration of selfhood. The stark black and white imagery made the story even more oppressive, leaving audiences unsure how to react. Modern critics hail Seconds as one of the most important psychological science fiction films ever made. Its themes of identity pressure, conformity, and existential dread feel powerfully modern. Once neglected, it is now celebrated as a forgotten gem, reborn through critical rediscovery. Number 2. Quatermass and the Pit, 1967. Quatermass and the Pit emerged as a bold blend of archaeology, folklore, and extraterrestrial terror, yet critics of the 60s failed to appreciate its ambition. They viewed it as another modest Hammer production instead of recognizing its sweeping ideas about human origins, fear, and inherited violence. Because of this early dismissal, the film slipped from serious discussion despite its groundbreaking storytelling. The plot begins with construction workers uncovering a mysterious object deep beneath a London subway station. Scientists soon determine that the object is not a bomb, nor a relic, but something far older and stranger. Ancient visions, psychic disturbances, and terrifying discoveries reveal that humanity itself may have been shaped by an alien force. This shocking premise unfolds through rising tension and an atmosphere of dread that grows heavier with every revelation. Behind the scenes, the filmmakers faced limitations typical of Hammer Studios. They relied on tight sets, practical effects, and intense performances rather than expensive spectacle. Critics interpreted these limitations as weaknesses. However, modern viewers see them as strengths that heighten the story's claustrophobic suspense. The film's willingness to connect science fiction with folklore and collective fear was far ahead of its time. Number 1. The Power, 1968. The Power arrived quietly with little fanfare, even though it came from the visionary producer George Pal. Critics of the era expected a simple thriller and were unprepared for its blend of psychological mystery, telepathy, and societal paranoia. Because it did not fit the common sci-fi mold, reviewers dismissed it. This quick judgment buried the film's true significance. The story follows a research team investigating extraordinary human abilities. When one member suspects that a powerful telepath is hiding among them, the group spirals into fear, suspicion, and deadly conflict. Reality distorts as the mysterious figure manipulates perceptions, controls objects, and erases evidence. The protagonist must confront an invisible enemy whose mind surpasses human limits. The result is a tense, cerebral battle, rather than an action-driven adventure. Production embraced unusual visual techniques, including distorted sets, swirling imagery, and symbolic motifs. These choices created a disorienting experience that critics misinterpreted as confusion. They did not grasp that the film was depicting a world controlled by unseen mental power. Performances were intense and layered, yet reviewers ignored them, focusing instead on the unconventional pacing. In later decades, film historians reevaluated The Power and praised its originality. Many consider it George Pal's most underrated work. Its influence can be traced in later stories about psychic warfare and hidden superhuman abilities. Once forgotten, the film now stands as a brilliant overlooked gem from the end of the 60s. These 14 films remind us that innovation often goes unnoticed in its own time. Critics may have ignored them, but their ideas, echoes, and visions helped shape science fiction for decades. By revisiting them, we honor the imagination that dared to challenge the familiar. Forgotten once, they now shine brighter than ever.